correct me if I'm wrong, but your organization generally doesn't make primary endorsements. You make general election endorsements. Do I have that right to start with before I go further?
Yes, yes, you do.
All right, so explain to us why deviate from that this year? Why get involved in a primary?
Well, this is a very unusual primary. Number one, 5 people running for an open seat. And so we felt that it was important to try to take a position early on in the primary rather than waiting until after the primary and just supporting whoever wins, where we decided to get our 2 cents in early and make sure that the best candidate gets to the election.
So you wanted to be, is that
proactive?
To say, okay. Okay.
Doug, would it be possible for you to speak to an issue that the governor keeps talking about, which is that he thinks we should increase the student-to-teacher ratio from 11 to 1 to 13 to 1? And I'm sure that's an issue that Vermont NEA is very concerned about. Would you be willing to make a statement about that?
Well, I'm concerned about it too, because it's reducing the discussion about the quality of education to a mere numbers game. And to me, that's the wrong approach. But it's also very, it's in a way symbolic of the whole approach that Governor Douglas has taken to education, which is very top-down, that somehow through our local control of education in Vermont, which is important to Vermonters, and somehow in spite of the best efforts that are going on with our educators and our administrators and our school boards, that somehow schools can't figure out how to provide a high-quality education to their kids at an affordable price. And that's really up to the taxpayers to decide. And taxpayers are voting for school budgets. And I believe school boards and educators are being very, very careful about their budgets in recent years. There's certainly been an effort to figure out how to provide education in the most efficient and cost-effective way. I don't believe that the governor's interference or proposed interference is going to help with this equation at all. What I think is needed, as I said in my remarks, is a more cooperative, collaborative relationship between state government and our local school districts. We have in common the desire to get kids a good education, and we have in common the desire to do it in the most efficient way possible. The governor's been trying this top-down approach for the last 8 years, and it hasn't accomplished anything except to put people in 2 armed camps, and that's not the way we create good public policy in this state. So my objective will be to, as governor, will be to reach out to our educators and our education community in a way and saying, how can the state work with you in partnership to do what we want, which is to make sure every child in the state is getting a high quality education and that we're doing it in the most efficient way possible. I believe there's a lot that can be done without dictating from on high how it should be done.
But that said, student enrollments are meant to drop from 92,000 statewide to 85,000 within the next several years. I can't remember what the time frame is, but it's within a fairly short time frame. And I'm just wondering, as school enrollments decline, how you would solve this problem of very expensive small schools. I mean, would you provide incentives for schools to merge, or would you get rid of the small school grants, or how would you know, what are some of the specific things you would do? Well,
first, I wouldn't get rid of the small school grants. The small school grants were actually created in the Lieutenant Governor's office when I was Lieutenant Governor of the state of Vermont. I think they were very instrumental in helping our small schools stay alive. And when you go into the communities that do have small schools, what you see is community spirit. Now, some of those communities are asking the questions of whether they can continue, and they are engaged in discussions with their neighbors about possible mergers and consolidations. And I think that's fine, and that's appropriate if it's done at that local level. But again, having folks in Montpelier say, you know, thou shalt do this or thou shalt not do that is not the way to approach this issue. And when you go to those communities, the schools are community centers. They don't like the idea of putting kindergartners and first graders, young children, on school buses to go to the neighboring towns. Parental involvement is really important, and it's going to be harder to get parental involvement if the school is 15 or 20 miles away. So it's not that they are more expensive and therefore unaffordable. Communities are making their own decisions about whether they want to continue to pay for those schools, and I'll leave that to those folks at the local level.
But is the current system sustainable if the number of students is going like that and the number of staff is going like that? At some point, doesn't this become an unsustainable system?
You know, Bob, school expenditures are actually going up in recent years less than municipal budgets and less than state budgets. So it's interesting to have folks at the state government level complaining about school budgets when the state budgets are going up faster. The demographics are an issue. I mean, I served on a school board for 3 years, and we try to deal with that issue. And I think you're going to see around the state, as student enrollments decline, as you look at what's happened and as you look at what's going to happen, yes, there you are seeing, in some cases, fewer educators because there are fewer children. But the fact is, when you have a school that's got an average class size maybe of 18 kids and they lose 10 kids, well, you aren't going to be able to do with one less educator. Over time, I think you're seeing combining of classes where the numbers have dropped considerably. So I think you are seeing some changes in staffing. But I also want to point out that if you look at what's happening in staffing in our schools, it's not just the classroom teachers. And I talked about it in this room the other night. There are increasing numbers of children who are coming into our schools, young children with behavioral and emotional problems. There are increasing number of children with autism. We don't know exactly where that's all coming from, but we do know that it's a reality, and those children are entitled to a good education. In many cases, they are requiring a more intensive involvement by educators, and maybe more one-on-one or one-on-two involvement. We need to ask ourselves those questions about why that's happening. And if there are more kids coming to school with emotional difficulties that make it hard for them to be in the classroom, we have to be asking ourselves what's going on in families, what's going on in society, and that always brings me back to pre-K education. And I said it to the K-12 educators, if there was one thing I could do to improve the quality of education, I'm going to start with pre-K, so that make sure every child arriving in kindergarten is ready to get off to a good start. And if we're able to do that, I think we can be addressing some of these staffing issues. The problem I'm having with all this discussion is that it's starting with just raw numbers, statistics, without any real analysis of what's behind those numbers. And when you analyze the numbers, it's a much more complex topic. But if you look at what school boards are doing and what local school teachers associations are doing, is they're acknowledging these issues, and they are sitting down and they are working together and they're working through those issues. I just don't feel it should be dictated from on high, given the system we have, which is a local control system, which to me has great value. And you can look at districts, other districts in the country. I talk about Hawaii as a favorite one. It's a unified school district. It is one school district, and I wouldn't trade our system for their system.
Can you remind me, did you vote for the incentive consolidation bill that the governor didn't sign?
Yes, I did. I think incentives are fine. I think working in partnership is fine, but to go out there and dictate new school boundaries is not the right way to go. Anything else? Okay. Again, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think Vermont is really ready to move forward in many, many ways in our education and in our economy, and I'm ready for the job. So I'm looking forward to this, and you're going to be a huge help in getting me there. Thank you.